Information is not power. If it were, the ancient world would have stayed the same forever. True power lies in structure. How did Thales and Anaximander turn chaotic data into the foundation of science? Let's find out. Welcome to SciPhiHi. For thousands of years, the Nile was the pulse of Egypt. Every year, it flooded. This wasn't just a natural event, it was an economic crisis. The floods wiped out every boundary, every fence, and every stone that marked who owned what land. To solve this, the Egyptians created a class of elite specialists, the Harpedonapti, or rope stretchers. These were the first true cartographers and surveyors. They were incredibly skilled. Using ropes and basic geometry, they could redraw property lines with surgical precision after the waters receded. They had massive amounts of data. They had scrolls filled with the exact dates of previous floods, the heights of the water, and the measurements of the fields. This was information. But it was irregular information. It was a collection of facts used for a single purpose: tax collection and land rights. To the Egyptians, the Nile flooded because the gods willed it. They didn't care why it happened in a physical sense. They only cared how to fix the mess it left behind. Their knowledge was a recipe book, useful for survival, but stagnant. It was information that could be used, but not evolved. Enter Thales of Miletus and his brilliant student Anaximander. When they looked at the work of the Egyptian surveyors, they saw something the Egyptians didn't. They didn't just see a problem to be solved, they saw a system to be understood. Thales is often called the first philosopher, but he was also the first scientist because he made a radical assumption. The universe is predictable. When Thales observed the Nile, he didn't look for the hand of a god. He looked for a physical cause. He proposed that the Etesian winds blew against the flow of the river, causing the water to back up and flood. Now, from a modern perspective, Thales was factually wrong. But from a scientific perspective, he was monumentally right. Why? Because he moved away from divine whim to physical causality. He took the irregular data of the Egyptians and tried to fit it into a universal rule. Anaximander took this a step further. He realized that if you want knowledge to last, it cannot stay in the head of a single surveyor or be locked in a specific location. He sought to organize the world's information into a rational order. He created a worldview that wasn't based on where I am standing, but on a geometric perspective that could be shared with anyone, anywhere. This brings us to the core question of our video. What is the difference between disordered information and scientific knowledge? Disordered information is like a pile of loose bricks. Each brick, each fact, is real. You can hold it. You can use it to hit something. But you can't live in it. It has no structure. If the person who holds the bricks leaves, the house disappears. This is how information functioned before the Milesian Revolution. It was local, temporary, and disconnected. Scientific knowledge, however, is the architecture. When Thales and Anaximander began to organize their observations, they created a standardized language. By using logic and geometry to explain the Nile's floods or the movement of the stars, they created a system that was transferable. This is the secret of the Anaximander shift. If you have a system, you can pass it to the next generation. They don't have to start from zero. They can look at your map of knowledge, find a mistake, fix it, and make the map better. This is called cumulative progress. The Egyptian surveyors were masters of their craft, but their knowledge didn't grow. It only repeated. Science, because it is organized and rational, is the only form of information that must grow. We live in the most informed era in human history. Every day, quintillions of bytes of data are generated. But are we more scientific? Not necessarily. Most of the information we consume today is like the Nile floods. It's messy, it's temporary, and it's often tied to emotion rather than reason. We have the ropes to measure our current problems, but do we have the maps to understand the bigger picture? The lesson from Thales and Anaximander is that order is a choice. They chose to believe that the world made sense. They chose to organize their thoughts into theories that could be tested and improved. When you organize your knowledge, you are doing more than just learning. You are building a legacy. You are creating something that can be handed to a child, a student, or a future citizen of the world, allowing them to see further than you ever could. This is the science in SciPhiHi. This is the philosophy of why we learn. And this is the history of how we became human. The Nile still flows today. But we no longer see it as a mysterious god. We see it through the lens of hydrology, geology, and history. We see it through the system that began with two men in Miletus who dared to ask why. Thank you for joining us on this very first journey. At SciPhiHi, we believe that the world is a beautiful, organized puzzle waiting to be solved. If you want to help us map the truth, one video at a time, hit the subscribe button and join our global community of thinkers. Remember, information is everywhere. Knowledge is what you build with it. I'm your friend. We talk like ancient philosophers, and this is SciPhiHi. We'll see you in the next discovery.
Welcome to the channel. Think of this as an audiobook journey into the past. Two Roman citizens took the scattered wisdom of ancient Greece and organized it into the world's first systematic texts. In these works, every topic is classified and every mystery is addressed. Today, we will see exactly how they mapped the world and who provided the answers to nature's greatest questions. Let's dive in. Imagine a world where a sudden earthquake wasn't just a shifting of tectonic plates, but a sign from the gods. A world where a comet in the sky could predict the fall of an empire. This was the world of the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago. But amidst the superstition, two men dared to look closer. They didn't just want to believe, they wanted to know. Today, we are diving into the roots of scientific thought. We are exploring the two most influential scientific texts of the ancient world, Pliny the Elder's Natural History and Seneca's Natural Questions. One man tried to catalog every single thing on Earth, while the other tried to understand the why behind the chaos of nature. What were the earliest texts on science? And how did these two Roman giants lay the foundation for the way we see the world today? Let's find out. Let's start with Gaius Plinius Secundus, better known as Pliny the Elder. Pliny was a man obsessed with facts. He was a naval commander, a lawyer, and a close friend of the emperor, but in his spare time, he was a human search engine. His masterpiece, Naturalis Historia, Natural History, is one of the largest single works to survive from the Roman Empire. It consists of 37 books covering everything from astronomy and geography to zoology, botany, and minerals. Pliny claimed to have gathered over 20,000 facts from 2,000 different volumes by 100 authors. To Pliny, life is being awake, vita vigilia est. He was so dedicated to his work that he would have someone read to him while he ate, and he even took notes while being carried in a litter through the streets of Rome. But what makes his work science? While he didn't use the modern scientific method, he was the first to attempt a systematic classification of the natural world. He described the properties of metals, the medicinal uses of plants, and even the behavior of elephants. However, he also included myths, mermaids, headless men, and dragons. Why? Because to Pliny, the world was so vast and full of wonders that he believed it was arrogant to assume anything was impossible. While Pliny was busy counting the leaves on a tree, Another man was looking at the wind that moved them. Lucius Annaeus Seneca, the famous Stoic philosopher, took a very different approach in his work, Natural's Questions, Natural Questions. Seneca wasn't interested in making a list. He wanted to understand the mechanics of the universe. Written near the end of his life, his work focuses on meteorology and physics, thunder, lightning, rainbows, and earthquakes. For Seneca, science was deeply personal. He lived in a time of political instability, and he believed that studying nature was a way to find peace. If you understand why an earthquake happens, you are no longer terrified of it. He once wrote that the human mind is naturally curious, and that we were born to contemplate the heavens. Seneca's work is a bridge between philosophy and science. He used logic to debunk superstitions. He argued that lightning wasn't a weapon thrown by Jupiter, but a result of compressed air. He was searching for the laws of nature, the rational order of the universe. This was a revolutionary step toward the scientific mindset we have today.
So, how do they compare? Pliny's natural history is a horizontal study. It is wide. It covers the what? It is the ancestor of Wikipedia and the modern encyclopedia. If you wanted to know what kind of stone to use for a statue or how to cure a stomach ache with herbs, you went to Pliny. Seneca's Natural Questions is a vertical study. It is deep. It covers the how and why. It is the ancestor of physics and meteorology. Seneca didn't care about the names of all the fish in the sea, he cared about why the tides moved. One man provided the data, the other provided the inquiry. Together, they represent the two pillars of science, observation and theory. The lives of these two men ended as dramatically as their books. Pliny the Elder died in 79 AD during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Ever the scientist, he sailed toward the volcano to rescue friends and to observe the phenomenon up close. He died inhaling the toxic fumes, a martyr for curiosity. Seneca, on the other hand, was forced to commit suicide by Emperor Nero. Even in his final moments, he remained a stoic, calm, and focused on the rational soul. Their texts survived the fall of Rome and became the primary textbooks of the Middle Ages. For over 1,500 years, if you were a scholar in Europe, you were reading Pliny and Seneca. They taught us that the world is not just a place we live in, but a puzzle waiting to be solved. The earliest texts on science weren't perfect, but they were the beginning of a grand journey. They shifted our gaze from the gods to the earth. What do you think? Is it more important to gather all the facts like Pliny, or to ask the big why like Seneca? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Until next time, stay curious. I'm your friend, we discuss like ancient philosophers, and this is SciPhiHi. We'll see you in the next discovery. For millennia, divine powers dictated human existence. But in ancient Greece, a profound shift began. People started questioning the gods, turning instead to the power of human logic. This radical intellectual awakening laid the foundation for modern thought. Join us as we explore how this birth of free inquiry forever reshaped our world and ignited the path to civilization. Look at the map of ancient Greece. Unlike the vast river valleys of Egypt or Mesopotamia, it's a fractured landscape of mountains and islands. This geography prevented a single empire from dominating the land. Instead, it fostered isolated communities, compelling them to look outward. The sea wasn't a barrier, it was their vital highway, connecting them to the wider world. The Greek world was the beating heart of ancient commerce. Cities and Anatolian coasts like Miletus acted as massive hubs, where trade routes from faraway lands intersected. Goods traveled from as far as ancient Angleterre, England, and all the way from China and India. These riches didn't just stay in one place, they were redistributed through a vast network of Greek colonies stretching from Egypt and the Black Sea to Sicily and Spain. But this wasn't just an exchange of silk and spices. This constant movement created a massive cultural web across the Mediterranean. Through trade, the Greeks didn't just meet merchants. Unlike the rigid, god-king structures of the East, Greek religion was surprisingly individualistic. There was no powerful, centralized priesthood to gatekeep the truth. The gods were flawed, emotional, and very human. This lack of religious dogma allowed a unique space to open up, a space where a man could question the stars without being burned as a heretic. Thinking about the earth, sea, sky, animals, and plants wasn't about gods. The belief that contemplating these subjects was noble and valuable, this attracted free individuals. Centralized authority can be the enemy of innovation. In the Greek polis, or city-state, there was no great king to demand absolute silence. Whether in Athens or Miletus, the city-state structure encouraged public debate. Those concept the birth of another important human community style called the democracy. When you are a citizen of a city rather than a subject of a crown, your voice matters. Policy was decided by persuasion, not decree.
Before this era, the world was split into two, powerful kings and poor workers. But trade in the ancient Greece created a new group, the middle class. These were the first entrepreneurs. They weren't born into royalty, they built their wealth with their own hands and clever minds. Because they were independent, they wanted to make their own choices. They didn't want a king telling them how to live or what to think. As the philosopher Aristotle said, this group became the heart of a stable city. They had the money to be comfortable and the leisure time to be curious. For the first time in history, people had the freedom to look freely at the all-system we call Earth, space, nature, and ask, why, instead of just working to survive. So, as you can see, it wasn't just a magic miracle. It was a perfect storm. The perfect storm of geography, trade, decentralized politics, culture, individualism, and integration with other cultures. The Greeks didn't just find new things, they found a brand new way to see. They began to think and learn with pure curiosity and total freedom. On this channel, SciPhiHi, we will discuss and learn like them. We will try to make our mind free. And it's true, they changed the world forever. Their views created we call modern world. Do not miss other videos of this channel. See you next time.
We have more data than ever, but do we have more wisdom? Modern schools teach us what to think, but ancient philosophers focused on how to think. Today, we explore why their 2,500-year-old freedom of mind is still superior to our modern institutions. Imagine living 2,500 years ago. There were no satellite images, no electronics, and no modern technology, only the natural world. Yet, people at that time were asking questions that were as sophisticated as those studied today by institutions such as NASA. Consider the questions written by Pliny the Elder in Naturalis Historia. In the 1855 Latin to English translation published in Bonn's Classical Library, Pliny's Natural History, the book includes topics such as the form of the world, the elements and the planets, the nature of the stars and the motion of the planets, the eclipses of the moon and the sun, the magnitude of the stars. This book presents the answers given by philosophers to these questions. You can find videos about this book on this channel. These topics are remarkable when we consider the technological limits of that period. However, the subjects do not end there. The book also discusses the motions of the planets and the general laws of their relationships. Why the same stars have different motions. General laws of planetary movement. The reasons for the different colors of stars. The motion of the sun and the causes of irregular day lengths. Up to this point, the questions relate to fundamental sciences such as physics and geology, which are still studied today. There is more. The book also includes the distances of the stars, the dimensions of the world. These topics are closely related to what we now call geomatics or surveying engineering. Ancient thinkers considered how to measure the Earth and the universe without modern tools. They developed different ideas and contributed through debate and observation. This is impressive. They also addressed the classification of living organisms, discussing their nature, location, and species. In addition, they examined atmospheric and climate-related phenomena. Thunder and lightning. The origin of winds. Various observations about wind. They even explored advanced topics related to climate and the Earth itself, including the nature of the Earth, the form of the Earth. We will examine these subjects in detail in a later video. However, an important question remains: how could people without standard measurement systems, such as the metric or imperial system, think about such complex issues? How could they ask questions like that the Earth is at the center of the world? What exists at the center of the world? They also proposed theories about tides, under the topic the power of the moon over land and sea. This is truly remarkable. We can discuss the remaining topics in another video. The key question is this: how could people, without modern knowledge, tools, or formal education systems, be confident enough to ask such questions and respectful enough to consider different perspectives? What is the definition of civilization? One possible definition is the ability of people with different ideas to live together freely and share knowledge. This can be seen as the beginning of civilization, philosophy, and scientific inquiry. Today, institutions such as NASA and the European Space Agency, ESA, launch satellites to observe the Earth. These organizations are government-funded and financially dependent on states. In contrast, many ancient philosophers who addressed these fundamental questions were middle-class, entrepreneurial, or financially independent individuals. They did not prioritize social status or professions. For them, the highest form of humanity was the person who tried to understand nature. We should also remember that these thinkers lived in times when famine, natural disasters, and pandemics were common. This leads us to reflect: if they were human, are we, modern society, equally human? Are we as curious? Can we contribute as much to humanity? Are we as civilized? Modern education systems mainly focus on preparing individuals for careers and practical life. However, do they teach the thinkers who formed the foundations of science? In today's age of artificial intelligence, automation, and information, perhaps the most valuable action is to read, discuss, and understand ancient philosophers. Learning to think like them may be a key to intellectual freedom. I'm exploring these timeless questions in my new journal entries here at SciPhiHi, and I'd love to have you with me. If you want to think, wonder, and explore the things together, please subscribe and join the conversation. Let's free our minds, one question at a time. See you in the next video.
What truly liberated the first philosophers? It wasn't vast libraries. It was the sincere curiosity of a child. A pure rebellion against a world blinded by dogma. To find freedom today, we must return to that original innocence. Let's explore how. The first philosophers shared something very important, yet very simple. They were individuals who valued their individuality above all else. They didn't wear the opinions of their families or societies like ready-made clothes. For them, letting others suppress their thoughts was unacceptable. To them, the goal was to live humbly and freely. They knew that humans are both economic and political beings. To be economically independent was the first step to being intellectually free. Self-sufficiency, being the master of one's own soul, was their common ground. But what truly liberated them? It was the power to ask questions as simple and sincere as those of a small child. They asked about nature and life, independent of family, culture, or religion. By seeking answers with that same sincerity and humility, they discovered philosophy, science, and freedom. This is how they built the very foundation of modern thought and civilization. You will find the core essence of the first philosophers here. And in the future, this channel will dive much deeper into their world. Now let's look at the questions that truly set them free. The first philosopher, Thales, is mentioned in Historia Naturalis during the 48th Olympiad, around 592 BCE. Anaximander followed in the 58th Olympiad. These two thinkers from Miletus lived in the same city at the same time. However, they were not bound by the relationships of teacher and student or master and slave. Anaximander, recognized as the second philosopher in history, was simply Thales's friend. Like you, like me, and like everyone else, they were individuals who deeply valued their freedom. According to ancient texts, they provided us with knowledge about the universe, existence, lunar observations, the eclipse of the sun, periodical winds, and the nature of water. Their focus was nature. Financial independence, individuality, and thinking about the natural world were what made them free. Being humble, having self-sufficient finances. What we should learn from this is to move away from a popular culture focused on shopping, vanity, and showing off. We must value ourselves as independent individuals. Instead of a luxury lifestyle, we should strive to be free individuals who are humble yet financially self-sufficient. The modern world was built by the people of the ancient world. Ideas like free citizenship and free thought became the pillars of our modern age. Instead of struggling in the chaos and scattered information of today's world, we should understand the first philosophers and liberate ourselves as they did. Let us think like them. Join me on this channel as we talk, listen, and try to understand these topics. Let's realize the value of our own lives and add value to ourselves together. Subscribe to this channel. I look forward to seeing you in new videos. Let's discover our freedom together. We live in the age of information, and on this channel, we want to share and help you discover pure knowledge. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. We are told that science started with curiosity. But what if it actually started with business? Before Rome and before industry, a new kind of spirit changed everything. This is the story of how entrepreneurs created the modern mind. Many trade goods came by sea and land from the east and the west, from places whose geography was not well known. In fact, people lived in a world very similar to today's economic system in ancient world. Did you know that Thales, known as the first philosopher, made a speculation in olive oil pressing facilities, similar to modern stock market speculation? It is known that Thales earned a large amount of money from this speculation. Is it a coincidence that the first philosopher was also a speculator? Is it funny, or is it an important lesson? Let us think about this together. Economic opportunities such as houses, workplaces, olive groves, olive oil presses, and mills that provided passive income were similar to those of today. For example, buying a large vineyard or building a wine production facility could be a profitable investment. Let us look at the small city-states on the Aegean coast. Their relationship with trade was like a miniature version of today's commercial world. We can explain this trade scene as follows. Trading ships left ports in what we now call England, shown on ancient maps as Angleterra. Although these ships were wooden and small compared to modern ones, they passed through the strait called the Pillars of Hercules by ancient people, today's Strait of Gibraltar. They stopped at other Mediterranean ports, and trade goods from the east, coming through the silk and spice routes, met unique products on the Aegean coast of Anatolia. High-quality products such as olive oil and red wine from the region were distributed from Egyptian ports to all major Mediterranean ports. Trade opportunities and the freedom to invest in trade goods and real estate led to the rise of a middle class between citizens and rulers, as Aristotle said. This middle class had the freedom to live without constant work, supported by trade and passive income. According to Aristotle, these people demanded freedom, wanted to be free, and wanted to think freely. The first scientists, known as natural philosophers or pre-Socratics, were mostly individuals from this middle class. At that time, the ruling class could be a council, a king, or two kings ruling the city. We know that the first philosophers who developed science and philosophy were assigned to establish trade colonies along the Aegean, Marmara, and Black Sea coasts. These people had an entrepreneurial spirit, and cities used these skills for trade. Thales, who lived in the city of Miletus, mentioned at the beginning of the video, was known for his success in one of the two high-value products of the region, olive oil or wine production. It is also known that he visited the Greek trade colony in Egypt. Olive groves, which had high commercial value, were known to produce fruit one year and rest the next year. In the year without fruit, olive prices and olive oil press prices dropped significantly. Thales rented all the olive oil pressing facilities in the region for 1 year. With this speculation, he earned a very large amount of money from the olive oil presses the following year. Is it a coincidence that a person deeply involved in trade, like a stock market speculator, produced the sparks of free thought? People who asked questions and produced ideas in natural sciences and philosophy were generally like Thales. They belonged to the middle class, had an entrepreneurial spirit, understood the economy, and were closely connected to trade. They were not people who earned a salary by working fixed hours. They had time to think. In today's world, such people are called entrepreneurs, or people with an entrepreneurial spirit. In the birth of science and philosophy, economy, entrepreneurial spirit, and freedom were essential. In this video, we discussed the relationship between entrepreneurial spirit and philosophy, and how the economic structure of small cities on the Aegean coast was actually very similar to today. We tried to understand the people of that time. If you want to follow these unique topics in philosophy and history, which are shared values of all people, please subscribe. Leave a comment. I would very much like to read your free thoughts. See you in the next important topic. Thank you for listening. Stay with science, philosophy, and history. See you in the next video. We are living in the age of AI. Data is everywhere. Algorithms decide, systems act, machines speak. And yet, this age brings us back to the oldest question of all. What is truth? Thanks to this channel, in the IT age, we won't be afraid of AI. We'll ride it like a horse. We won't be swept away by chaos. We'll dance with it. Let's discuss the simple subjects of our time, which is as simple as water, earth, and air, together on this channel. As in ancient Greece, philosophy liberated people, and free people liberated philosophy. Today, philosophy will liberate us again. So let's learn philosophy for our liberation. AI is not just technology. It is philosophy in action. The ideas behind today's algorithms were born thousands of years ago. To survive the digital noise and confusion around us, we must return to meaning, concepts, and existence. This is no longer an academic interest. It is a necessity. The first philosophers turned chaos into order. They learned how to classify, define, and connect ideas. This way of thinking later became the foundation of programming languages and data structures. From Thales to Aristotle, these ideas still shape how AI defines what exists and how it creates meaning. AI can process data at incredible speed. But does it understand? That is the real question. Large language models generate words using probabilities, not awareness. Here, the ancient idea of logic becomes powerful again. Without understanding concepts like justice, freedom, and reality, we allow algorithms to redefine them for us, the IT world. And this era are built upon the concepts of ontology, semantics, and epistemology. Ontology examines being, semantics examines meaning, and epistemology examines knowledge. The first to discover these concepts were philosophers. Therefore, learning, reading, and understanding them makes us more resilient in the IT age. AI tools that operate on a 0-1 principle. Either there is current or there isn't, like electricity, without a biological brain, are a reality today. We are no different from those who first discussed these issues. That's why pre-Socratic thinkers are so valuable. Learning these ancient ideas changes our role. We are no longer passive users of AI. We become thinkers, designers, and leaders. Those who can see order inside chaos are the ones who understand its rules. When philosophy meets AI, speed does not scare us. It empowers us. AI will ride it like a horse. We won't be swept away by chaos. We'll dance with it. AI tools that operate on a 0-1 principle. Either there is current or there isn't. Like electricity, without a biological brain, are a reality today. We are no different from those who first discussed these issues. That's why pre-Socratic thinkers are so valuable. Actually, the most important thing to say is that there is no IT without this philosophy. Without philosophy, innovation, engineering, sustainability, open-mindedness, leadership, and self-confidence are impossible. We cannot understand our world in the IT age without something else. Living in a world we don't understand is frightening. It involves insecurity, anxiety, and worry about the future. Therefore, learning philosophy, understanding the people who discovered philosophy, who explored science, and who first asked these conceptual questions, more valuable than money, gold, or status. People who say it's unnecessary cannot look at technological advancements fearlessly in the age of information technology. What we learned from the first philosophers, the natural philosophers or pre-Socratics, is that philosophy is the most understandable and most valuable form of knowledge. It is knowledge and a logical way of approaching things. Philosophy is the language of prestige, and not just that. It's a timeless, common language. For example, in the Middle Ages, you could talk to a king about Socrates, to a Roman, or to a professor about ancient Greece. Philosophy is the shared value and language of people who don't have time for it. What is a politician who doesn't know ancient Greece and history but a mediocre propaganda tool? He doesn't know how the Roman Republic evolved into an empire. He doesn't know about the ancient Greek city-states that constantly changed from different regimes to democracy. He can influence societies as an ignorant demagogue, but ultimately, he's a mediocre individual who doesn't know philosophy. Imagine highly prestigious people who don't know philosophy. Can you imagine a very good engineer or a very good doctor not knowing who Aristotle was? Imagine them not knowing Thales or Anaximander. For a physics professor not to know that Democritus described the atom is, to say the least, a blatant display of ignorance. Philosophy can give you prestige, regardless of your geographical location, culture, or nationality. For example, if you meet a professor at one of the world's most prestigious universities like Harvard and bring up the topic of pre-Socratics, even a famous professor will sympathize with you. In other words, philosophy empowers you. It gives you prestige. Therefore, in the age of information, starting from beginning is the key. Let's continue about artificial intelligence that functions like an electrical outlet with an on/off switch. In other words, artificial intelligence without an organic brain. Digital codes and concepts are not independent of philosophy. On the contrary, they are a minor component of philosophy. Therefore, we become stronger if we look from a broad perspective, and we become stronger if we learn philosophy. The name of liberation from the chaotic world of information technology is philosophy. As in ancient Greece, philosophy liberated people, and free people liberated philosophy. Salvation in IT age is possible with only first philosophers. Salvation is here. Today, philosophy will liberate us again. So let's learn philosophy for our liberation. Let's discuss the simple subject of philosophy, which is as simple as water, earth, and air, together on this channel. Subscribe to the channel and take your place in the Senate of Wisdom by walking through a digital agora. See you in the next video. Prestige has always been important in the world, but our era is no different. The Roman Republic considered ancient Greek prestigious, and therefore wealthy Roman citizens and noble patricians hired teachers who spoke Greek for their children. This situation did not change in the Roman Empire. When the Roman Empire fell, its influence spread throughout Europe, and Latin became prestigious because it represented ancient Greek. So, prestige shifted from Greek to Latin. But the focus was on the ideas of free citizenship, universality, individuality, freedom of thought, science, philosophy, art, and democracy that ancient Greek enlightens us with today. In the Middle Ages, the language taught to children by feudal lords, barons, marquises, dukes, or kings was Latin. Speaking Latin was a sign of nobility, education, and prestige. This was true for all Western Europeans, which is why the words on the family crests of kings and emperors, their motto, were in Latin. We think that the period that people in the post-Middle Ages called the Renaissance, or Re-Enlightenment, desired was, of course, ancient Greece. The free thought that emerged in ancient Greece enlightened and liberated Europe in the darkness of the Middle Ages. After Spanish and even French, which began to dominate the world due to geographical discoveries, English became dominant in the modern world. The English language has become a vital tool for universality and international communication. But has it gone beyond being merely a language that enables billions of ordinary people to communicate with each other? These are important questions. During the Roman period, influenced by ancient Greece, Latin played a significant role in advancements in law, medicine, and natural sciences. This was due to the influence of ancient Greek philosophers like Hippocrates, and as a result of that period, the language of science today is Latin. In fields such as botany, medical and other fields, all terms and concepts come from Latin. Some schools in Europe still teach Latin to students. So, is being civilized, being a world citizen, related to knowing Latin, or is it related to ancient Greek? Before us, the language of prestige was ancient Greece. In today's information age, the information age, all concepts and scientific terms come from Latin, which was influenced by ancient Greece. Even after us, the language of prestige will be the views of ancient Greek philosophers, the fundamental, simple, and pure questions they posed to science, and the answers they sought. Time will change, but one thing is certain. The value of ancient Greece will not change. If we want to give prestige to ourselves and our children, teaching them about ancient Greece, especially the natural philosophers, the first philosophers we called them, the pre-Socratic philosophers, is a necessity. In fact, it's more than a necessity. It's a pleasure, a quality and prestigious investment in humanity. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, where we discuss these important issues, comment and like. We want to be a small but effective group of friends, of course with your contribution and support. See you in our next video. What's the big deal with Thales? Why do we keep talking about him? Let's dive in. His real contribution to philosophy isn't just a random theory. It's that he was the first person to look at the world and ask, what is everything actually made of? But here is the kicker. Instead of giving a religious or mythical answer, he looked for a secular, natural explanation. He didn't say the gods did it. This was the exact moment humanity stepped away from legends and walked into the world of science and philosophy. It's not his answer, the water, that matters. It's the way he thought. Here's why his question changed the game. First, nothing comes from nothing. By searching for a primary substance, arc-E, he was basically saying that the universe has a permanent, solid foundation. Even though poets like Hesiodos hinted at this before, Thales made it clear and logical. Second, unity in the chaos. Thales looked at the messy, complex world and believed there was one single thing connecting everything. Honestly, it doesn't matter that he chose water. What matters is the idea that behind all this variety, there is a unity. This is the father of all scientific thinking. His primary substance theory also opened massive doors for the future. First door is the debate started. Once he said it's water, he invited everyone else to disagree. It paved the way for others to say, wait, what if it's air or fire? Second door is thinking beyond the physical. He made people realize that the source of everything might not be a regular material we see every day. Maybe it's something more abstract, something deeper that we haven't named yet. In this video, you saw the summary of Thales in general. And if you like this video or want more about inventors of science and philosophy, join us, subscribe, like, send your opinion as a comment. See you in the next video, I believe. Did the man who asked the first scientific questions also corner the olive market? the legendary speculation of Thales, the first philosopher in history, right here. Olive groves, which had high commercial value, were known to produce fruit one year and rest the next year. In the year without fruit, olive prices and olive oil press prices dropped significantly. Thales rented all the olive oil pressing facilities in the region for 1 year. With this speculation, he earned a very large amount of money from the olive oil presses the following year. Is it a coincidence that a person deeply involved in trade, like a stock market speculator, produced the sparks of free thought? I recommend watching the comprehensive video about Thales' entrepreneurial spirit and the emergence of the first scientific questions. The secret of the first philosophers is waiting. And if you like this video or want more about inventors of science and philosophy, join us. Subscribe, like, send your opinion as a comment. See you in the next video. Today, let's talk about a very old thinker named Anaximenes. He lived in ancient Greece more than 2,000 years ago. Anaximenes asked a simple question. What is everything made of? His answer was simple too. He said, everything comes from air. But he did not mean the air we only breathe. He meant air as the basic thing of the world. Anaximenes said this: when air is calm and balanced, we cannot see it. But when air is pressed together, when there is more air in the same place, it changes. Pressed air becomes water. Pressed even more, when the same air takes up less space, it becomes earth. So for Anaximenes, the world is made by air becoming thick or thin. Now think about this. How can something become thick or thin? It needs space. There must be a place where air can spread out or be pressed together. This idea is very important because it leads to a new way of thinking. It means the world is made of small things inside empty space. Later thinkers called these small things atoms. Anaximenes did not use the word atom. He did not create atom theory. But his idea leads there. Step by step, his thinking opens the door to atom theory. That is why later philosophers, like Leucippus and Democritus, are often linked to Anaximenes. They respected him deeply. Now,